right, well then why don't we start with the opening prayers? So if you've got your 101 book, we can use that book. And would anybody like to be the Umze? Michael, you haven't done it. I don't think you've done it at all. Can we conscript Michael into doing this? Your microphone's off. I can't hear a word you're saying.
That wouldn't work as an umze. Yeah, I did it once. You had no feedback, so I'm sure it just, you totally forgot about it.
Well, it was a while ago, I'm sure.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I can do that.
All right.
When I get towards the 7 limb, I'm not quite sure what to do next. But
well, we don't need to do that tonight. So it's
all right. So let's start with our opening prayers. Altruistic motivation. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me,
obstructors who harm me,
and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in a state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. In Tibetan, Dagla dangwa je pedra no par je peje, Karpa dang tam che kien pe bardu cho par je patam chi kitso je pe, Manam kadang nyam pe sem chen tam che de wa dang de. Dugnao dang drel nur du la na me pa yang dak par zog pe chang chu rin po she to par de. Action Bodhicitta prayer. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Peche du sang margi ki bar du lang, yi sam ge walako, ma she bar du lungag yi sam ge walako. Du de ring ne sung te ni ma sang dat sam gi bar du lu nya gi sam ge wala ko. Long refuge prayer. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yadams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yadams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Tibetan. Drinchen sawa dang yi parche pe pel den lama dam panam la kyab suchio. Yidam kil kor gilak chognam la kyab suchio. Sangye chom den de nam la kyab suchio. Dampe cho nam la kyab suchio. Pagpe gendun nam la kyab suchio. Awo kandro chokyon sung me chok yeshe ki. Chendang den pa nam la kyab suchio. Taking the Bodhisattva vows. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to Bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to Bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. And Tibetan. Yang Chu Ning Por Chiki Bar Sangye Nam La Kyab Su Chi Chodang Jang Chu Senpai Sholayang De Shin Kyab Su Chi Jitar Nyoji De Sheki Jang Chu Tu Ni Kepadang Jang Chu Sempe La Pala Te Dagrim Shin Ne Patar Te Jin Drola Pendondu Jang Chu Semi Ke Gije Te Jin Duni La Pala Rimpa Jin Du La Pardi. Short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In Tibetan. Sangye Chodang Soki Chognam La Changchu Bardu Dagi Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jin Sogi Pe Nolam Ki Trola Penchir Sangye Drupar Cho. The Four Immeasurables. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. In Tibetan. Manam kadang yam pe sem chen tam che de wa dang de we yu dang den par gyur che dug now gi gu dang dral war gyur che dug now me pe de wa dang mi dral war gyur che Nye ring chak dang yi dang dral we tang yom la ne par gyur che. That's it, huh?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're really getting the melodies. Thank you very much.
Any practice? Thank you.
Well, it's that musicianship,
Yeah.
have an ear for melodies.
Okay.
Okay, so tonight we're talking about a very big subject, and we never can talk about it enough. And there's lots of aspects to bodhicitta, but the main core of bodhicitta are the four immeasurable qualities that we've talked about many, 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 many times. So everybody should know the four immeasurables. And does anybody want to tell us what they are, Gary? You can turn your microphone on.
I was looking at them today, and I have the description in the book in front of me, but I can't remember them right now because you put me on the spot.
All right. I know Adrian knows, and I'm quite sure that Michael knows. So the four immeasurables are something that you should know like the back of your hand. It's loving kindness.
Compassion.
Compassion. Huh?
Compassion.
Compassion.
Yeah.
Joy.
And wisdom.
And no, equanimity.
Equanimity.
Yes. Loving kindness and wisdom as two ways of expressing the same thing.
Okay.
So that's the same thing, loving kindness and wisdom. Compassion and method or skillful means is the same thing. So if we have wisdom, we're able to actualize that wisdom with the compassion, with the skillful means, with the method to help other beings. So those two go completely together. It's two sides of the same hand, we say. And then the joy is the empathetic joy that we have for ourselves, but especially for all beings and for our awareness of phenomena. You know, being able to recognize that we have this life, this gift of life that we gave ourselves. So we should have this empathetic joy for ourselves and all beings. And the equanimity is regardless whether those beings have joy, have loving kindness, have compassion or not, we treat them all the same. We see them all as the same. We see all things as the same. We have this dualistic nature. It's part of our human condition to have this dualistic nature. But we look at it in a sense of sameness. You know, in dualism, we can talk about that there's good and there's bad, but the good is stuff that was purified from being bad, and the bad is in need of purification. So we see it all as the same thing. You know, it's just a matter of a point of view, of a perspective, of being able to recognize things for as they are. And in dualistic nature, all things are possible. So that brings us the joy, and we have to maintain the sense of equanimity of all that. So those are the four qualities of bodhicitta, the four immeasurable qualities. So when we recite the four immeasurables that we just recited on, what is it, page 6 in our prayer book, that's what they are referring to.
Loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity.
Correct.
That you just explained.
Correct.
Qualities of bodhicitta.
Correct. So forgive me if I, we have a tendency to, get very verbal about these things, but it's important to do that. It's more important for the students to learn to do that. And part of the teacher is to give the inspiration, to give the example of doing that, because it's a conversation that we need to have with ourselves. When we sit down and do our meditation every day, we go through a process, and sometimes, we're overwhelmed with emotion and we can't get to the process right away. So we got to go through the process. We have to be able to verbalize the process to ourselves in our own mind. So saying this over and over and over again is part of the way that we habituate this. Right now, as ordinary beings, what we've been habituating is our laziness and our rationalization, for suppressing things, pushing things off and so on. So what we have to begin to habituate is our spirituality. Does that make sense?
Now more than ever.
Okay. Okay, Good. So now in this book, so in this handout that I gave you, I hope you all printed the handout or you have it handy. Chapter 9, the method cultivation of bodhicitta. So it says that this is the antidote for not knowing the method of practice for achieving Buddhahood. You know, how do we achieve Buddhahood? You know, well, initially we may not know. So here it is spelled out for us. Here is the method for doing that. And the method is the cultivation of bodhicitta. So first, it says the essence of the cultivation of bodhicitta is the desire to achieve, perfect, complete enlightenment for others' benefit. So this is, you know, bodhicitta is introduced to the disciples, to the students in the Mahayana. In the Hinayana, remember that's the discipline phase of Buddhist learning. And that's discipline, learning how to meditate, learning how to, you know, dress properly, learning how to tell the difference between right and wrong, virtue and non-virtue, and so on. All that stuff is in the Hinayana. But then when we get into the Mahayana, now we're introducing the idea of bodhicitta, you know, and doing things for the benefit of other beings. You know, that becomes the two benefits of bodhicitta, is that we're doing for other beings, number one, and number two, we're benefiting ourselves as a result of doing that for other beings. Those are the two benefits of accumulating bodhicitta. So here is this list of 22 similes of bodhicitta. So there's all these levels of this, you know, and later on, it's like that big circle I talk about, that spiral. That right now, you know, we're on that big part of the spiral, but later on we get up, you know, where the spiral is a lot closer, and we come back to these similes, and they mean more and more to us. So the quicker that we begin to appreciate these similes, the more we are able to habituate our awareness of bodhicitta. So Gary, you still with us, or did you leave the room? I see you. Okay. So here it says, on the ordinary level, this is very basic, broad level, there's 3 similes. There's 22 similes altogether, but there's 3 at the ordinary level. And there's the earnest desire, there's the general intention, and there's the possessing altruistic thought. So the earnest desire to achieve enlightenment is our motivation. And our general intention is to achieve enlightenment, the same thing. And our possessing altruistic thought is to increase our virtues. So the first one, earnest desire to achieve enlightenment, is like the earth. It's the basis of all good qualities. So everything that we have, everything that we use, is all relatable to the earth. So the Mother Earth, you know, the Gaia principle and so on. So this is our mother. This is the womb from which we are born, and, you know, figuratively. So all this is like the earth. So the Dharma, the bodhicitta, is like the earth to us. It's the mother of all our good qualities. And the general intention to achieve enlightenment is like gold, because it never changes. You know, that once we begin to recognize this motivation, you know, and we become propelled by it, you know, it's like a tractor beam that is pulling us in. And then as it comes in, then it keeps us propelled, it keeps us moving in a forward direction. So, and it continues on and on and on. It doesn't seem to stop. We can take a break from it, but a short period of time, the compelling wells up again and keeps us moving again because it never changes. So in this way, it's like gold, because gold never changes. It may get dirty, it may get a little tarnished, but with a little bit of rubbing, the gold comes right back to its luster, and it never changes to anything else. It remains gold. So this is our general intention, to achieve enlightenment. And then possessing altruistic thought is like the waxing moon. It increases all the virtues. So the waxing moon is the moon from the new moon, where you don't see the moon, but then it's increasing till it gets to the full moon. So the waxing moon is that it's ever increasing. Our virtues are ever increasing. We find more and more ways to be able to be aware of our virtues. And on the other hand, we're being aware of our non-virtues. And more fundamental than that is we're aware of the causes of those virtues and those non-virtues. So in this way, it's like the waxing moon. It's ever increasing. So I'm not going to go through all these 21. This is a meditation like all the rest of the things that we do. This is a meditation. So I invite you to, at some time soon, to sit down and do the opening prayers, and then come to this section right here and just read these 22 similes to yourself and kind of dissect them and build them and bring them back together again. Make sense of them, understand what they are, just one at a time, and not rush yourself. And this is how we get to know things. This is how we develop practice. The practice is not just sitting there trying to empty our mind. The practice is trying to fill our mind, guide our mind to virtue and to understanding the Dharma and the Dharma practices and bodhicitta and so on. So this path of application means, how do we take the motivation that was in the ordinary level and how do we apply it? So here it says it's like a fire, it's like a treasure, it's like a jewel mine, it's like the ocean, like a Vajra, like Mount Meru. So you can see, like a medicine, like a spiritual master, like a wish-fulfilling jewel, like the sun, like the melodious sound of the Dharma. So all these should all be inspirational things that are pulling that bodhicitta out of us. We all have bodhicitta, but it's pulling it, it's bringing it up, it's exalting us through this. So then these are representative of levels. It says here, the 10 bhumis. So the 10 bhumis are subjects for the path of insight and path of meditation. So as we get onto the path of being a bodhisattva, once we get on that path and we get on there with the path of seeing, that we see the path, we see what we've been, and now we've overcome that. Now we see the path forward, and now we're taking our first steps onto that path. So as we do that, we're developing these awarenesses that are what I just said here, like a treasure, like a jewel mine, like the ocean, like a Vajra. We're realizing these things as these 10 levels, these 10 bhumis of becoming a bodhisattva. So we're going to go into more depth with this in a few weeks. There's a couple chapters that are devoted to this in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So there's 10 bhumis, there's 10 levels of the bodhisattva. So we should wait for Adrian for a minute here when he gets back. I don't want to get too far ahead. Okay, so Adrian is back. So these 10 levels, these 10 bhumis. So these possessing the perfections, the moral ethics, and so on are the paramitas. And we, as I said, we'll talk about this. So these are the levels of 1 through 7 of the 10 levels. Then the next levels are the special path, it says, of a bodhisattva, the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis. And here it becomes, now we develop a clairvoyance. We develop merit and wisdom awareness. And we develop, we see the branches of enlightenment like a highway. We see compassion and special insight. We see the power of complete recollection and confidence. So what this is like, what this is a simile of, is in our age, Gary, I'm speaking to you and Michael and Adrian to some degree, you know, we've gone through our teenage years, we've gone through our 20s, we've gone through our 30s and our 40s and everything. Now we've reached a point where we can really look back and we can see and we can anticipate what others are going through because we've gone through that ourselves. You know, so we have the wisdom of our experiences and we can see these cycles for ourselves and so on. So this is how we develop, you know, what appears to be like clairvoyance or anticipation. So we begin to see the, like it says, the branches of enlightenment is like a highway. We can see that there's many different roads that we can take to get to our destination, our enlightenment. And some is a very scenic, beautiful way. Another one is much more hard work. You know, it's a much more, it's got a lot of traffic lights to it, or it's got a bumpy road, it's got a road under construction and so on. So we begin to see all that and we begin to appreciate all that. And we know what we need to do for ourselves. Sometimes we can't take the easy scenic way. Sometimes we got to go through the traffic lights and we got to go along the road that's under construction because we need that level of integration, of you know, stabilizing, of understanding what those obscurations are, what those stoplights are all about and so on. So we recognize all that and we negotiate all that. And then we can also become teachers for others. We become guidance for others who are going through this for the first time or they're anticipating going through this and so on. So we at our age level, at our experience level, then can talk to those who are, you know, somewhat younger than ourselves and guide them along the way. You know, when being on the path of a bodhisattva does not mean that you don't become a teacher until you reach the very highest levels, that at each of the levels, you teach to what it is that you know, to what your experience has been. And that helps to stabilize what it is that you think you know. Sometimes we go off on some tangents, you know, and we're saying things and maybe they're not quite right. And we learn that by trying to explain it to somebody. And if they've got, you know, that glassy-eyed look, you know, that you're not getting through, you say, well, maybe I need to rephrase this. I need to find another way to explain it. Or sometimes the people that you're talking to are asking you questions about what you just taught, and you see what it is that you need to make clearer. So we're learning, you know, from those people. So the point is that as a teacher, we learn a lot, we refine a lot, we purify a lot as a teacher. If we're always just the student and not actualizing, not practicing, not teaching what it is, we're not refining. It's like we're not burnishing the gold. We're not polishing the gold. It can remain tarnished to some degree or hidden to some degree. But by integrating, by engaging, this is how we purify. And that's one of the things about bodhicitta. That's one of the things about the Mahayana path, is that we engage. We engage with other people. In the Hinayana, it's all about going to the cave. It's all about going to the hermitage. It's all about your own enlightenment. But in the Bodhisattva goes to the cave, goes through the Hinayana, but then gets to a point and says, you know what? I can't go any further because I know that there are suffering beings who are down in the village. And there are some things that I've learned that can help those people. I can't get them to enlightenment because I can't get to enlightenment myself yet. I'm not that developed. I'm not that good yet. But I can go with what I know, I can go and help them. So the Bodhisattva now, in the Mahayana now, he says, I'm going to leave the cave. I'm going to leave the hermitage, and I'm going to engage with the village people. And that's one of the hallmarks of being a bodhisattva, being on that path. Now, it may mean that you may spend some time down in the village talking to these people, doing these things, knowing that soon you're going to go back to the cave. You're going to go back to the hermitage. Because now you will have, learned some things about your misconceptions, learn some things about your habitual tendencies, and now you have to purify those, but you purify those in your practices. You go back and you do those same practices that you were doing at the Hinayana stage, but now you're doing them in the Mahayana stage, and now you're getting more results. You're getting a greater luster of the gold that you're polishing and so on. So this is all perfectly natural. This is part of the process. So this is the special path of a bodhisattva. That's what it says here, doing these points 15 through 19. This is those points of being able to recognize these things and so on. Other people may look at these and think, oh my goodness, what a wonderful person this is, what they've done to do this, and were they born with this or something like that. But the point is, they had to work for it. It was their engagement into the process that made this possible. It just didn't come. It sometimes may appear that it came because their karma was ripe for it, but in a prior life they had to work for it. Sometimes it amazes me. Michael and I were talking about, musicians and so on, and I've met kids who are 13, 14 years old who get a guitar, and in 3 or 4 or 6 months, they're playing Jimi Hendrix, and they're playing, Led Zeppelin. They're playing all these tunes, man. It's just pouring out of these kids at 14, 15, 16 years old. And, I said to myself, I can't play those. I never could play those. How do they do that? Well, they've got the karma. Maybe they were, casualties of the 60s who, died early, as musicians. And
but you're really dating yourself, Lance.
I am indeed.
Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin.
Well, I am.
You and I and I guess Adrian and Michael know who they are. If
you understand my point, right?
Yeah, if kids today are playing Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin, then there is hope for the world.
I agree.
One thing I wanted to say to
my
you,
grandson, he calls me up on FaceTime, and he said, and he's playing, the Cream,
really?
the Cream and Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. I
10 years old.
That's incredible. That's a great thing. There is hope. I have discussed my fledgling Buddhist practice with some of my friends, and I usually discuss it, and it's not difficult to find these opportunities when they're very furious about something, and as people are these days. And I try to I don't use terms like equanimity. That I try to boil it down to basically seeing other people as human beings, which is to me what the core values of Buddhism are, at least some of them. And I find that so often when I'm trying to tell them to look at people as human beings, sentient beings, and they don't seem to want to see their humanity. Oh, they're terrible. They believe this and they believe that. And I said, well, put all that aside. What these people are afraid of the same things you're afraid of. They're just afraid in a different way. And basically what they want is acceptance, love. And they need to know that they're accepted and loved, and that you have.
Well, give me an example.
Well, it's right now, it's a lot of the political stuff that is going on. And I have a lot of friends who believe opposite of me, but I talk to them about different things. So let's not talk about that. Let's talk about that. I send them deliberately beautiful pictures and things like that. And I talk to them about their,
There are things that are not political.
that are not political. Yes. And
There's something else besides the politics.
yes, I tell them that, you may not like this particular person, this conversation at all, but they're really not a bad person. Look at the things they've accomplished. Yeah, but they destroy that with their beliefs. I said, no one does that. Beliefs are what they are. You have to see another person. I try to say you have to see another person's humanity in order to understand them and reach them, even if they disagree with you. But in this environment, I see it difficult to cut through that. And as I said,
All right, so what's your point?
my point is that I know it's not supposed to be easy to practice, and you can't stop reaching out to people because they don't want to be reached. But I think what I am receiving in the Buddhist teaching is maybe I should, instead of trying to get people to be calm, I should just be calm myself, because I've in this maelstrom that surrounds us, being loving and caring and humane sometimes just dissolves.
Well, would you say that the simplicity is a characteristic of what you're explaining here?
Yes. Yes.
So people are complicating their lives with all this stuff.
They certainly are.
And that the more that we come along on the spiritual path, whether it's Buddhism or whatever, there's a simplicity that follows that comes with that.
For me, but there's very little that I can, I can't cut through.
Well, they have to find it themselves.
They do.
Yeah. And that we become an inspiration for that sometimes, because people will say, I'm amazed how, in the midst of all this chaos, you're so calm and quiet about it all.
Well, I'm looking for that person. Apparently, I'm not that good at it yet.
Okay.
But I have had people say to me, I think I told you all the other day, a friend of mine said something like, what's happening to you?
Right. And that was good.
He's usually reasonably angry.
Right.
And I said, well, it's not that I like things. It's that it's a wise man who understands his limitations. And too late in life, I'm trying to do that.
Well, be thankful that you've got it down,
I've been part of the resistance all this time.
So Adrian, would you have anything comment on this? As it relates to you?
Well, I think there's a whole practice related to that, the pure view practice, where you see every person that you encounter is a Buddha. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this was from the Glimpse After Glimpse book. There is a story about Milarepa and was it Gampopa? I might be wrong about that. Was Gampopa Milarepa's student? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Gampopa was asking Milarepa, when can I start teaching? When can I be a teacher?
Right.
And I think Milarepa said, well, you can start being a teacher when you start seeing the person in front of you as a Buddha.
Right.
And then you can start teaching Dharma.
Do you
Because
remember? I'm
once
sorry. Go ahead.
once you start doing that, it's kind of like you're acknowledging that the enlightened qualities in each and every person that you encounter, and that everything that comes out as like a possible conflict situation is just a result of the obscurations that that person might inquire, or you as yourself might inquire, might experience through that in that moment.
Right. So going back to this book and what it was saying here, so somebody might identify that as clairvoyance. You know, from our standpoint, it's just practicality of recognizing that everyone has Buddha nature within themselves. You know, and if you you know what we've been doing on Friday nights by doing the deity yoga that we've been doing this past number of weeks, that at every part, the dedication part is always that we recognize all these other beings as the deity, whether it's Green Tar, it's Medicine Buddha, or Shen Reizek. It always states there, may I be that deity, and may I recognize all other beings as the deity. May I help them, for them to recognize that. So yes, that perfect view, what you're talking about, is expressed in every one of the deity yoga practices. Michael, you have any comment about this? Turn your microphone on.
Yeah, in our teachings, I remember language such that that all of the cells of our bodies are full of Buddhas, and all the little spaces between the cells, and every square centimeter of space is full of Buddhas. And one thing that tells me is that there's so much that I don't see, and the fact that that we're talking about all this liminal, all these beings being in the liminal worlds. I mean, it suggests that there's 11, 13 dimensions, whatever the physicists would say, and that's just extremely humbling, for one thing. For another thing, if we look at each other and we namaste, which means the enlightened person in me sees the enlightened person in you, then when it comes down to it and we want to just cut through the duality, we're the same organism. I mean, literally, we're part and parcel the same being. And so it's just self-compassion to treat others with the deepest of respect and admiration, and to cut through the biases that we travel with because we've grown up with them, that there's people that are not like us, there's people of color, there's people of different religious faiths, there's old people, there's women, there's transgenders, and there's all this baggage and all this noise that comes along with identities. And that's just us and our nature, human nature, of wanting to categorize, because we want to separate, we want to cut everything we see in half so that we know there's a back, there's a front, there's a good, there's a bad. And the Buddhism teaches us that that's not quite true. That, as you said, that there's what we consider bad is just good that hasn't been purified yet. and that, there's a coin, life and death, the other side is death, and it's the same coin. It's hard to keep all that in mind as you're walking around on this planet Earth, and you're bumping into assholes, and you're bumping into prejudice and hate, and don't get me near any white supremacists, but so I'm as guilty as anybody else of having bias against people and being willing to actually think about hate.
So there's an analogy here. There's a little bit of, so if we look at where we come from pure wisdom. We may not recognize it yet. We haven't made ourselves simple enough, and we haven't made ourselves quiet enough to recognize that wisdom. But use the analogy of the Big Bang. Before the Big Bang, it's all wisdom. And then here comes the Big Bang. And now here comes all this stuff, all this suffering, all this confusion. And now we have to have compassion for that, because it's without the wisdom, or it doesn't recognize the wisdom now. So now it's suffering. So we have to have compassion for ourselves in not having the wisdom or not recognizing wisdom. We have to have compassion for others for the same thing. But it's also saying to have compassion for life. If we could have stayed, in the bardo before we came in union with our father and mother's sperm and egg, we would have remained in that wisdom. But we chose to be born again, to come out and have a life. And now we have to have compassion for that life and for all others who are going through the same thing. In that way, we're all the same. We're all going through the life experience at whatever levels that means to any one of us. So bringing it back now to the book. So that was just all explaining, 15 through 19, these points of the 22 similes. So now to the Buddha's level, what does the Buddha say? What is the Buddha's view? The Buddha's view, it says, it's like hearing elegant sounds. It's like a current of a river. It's like a cloud. The Buddha, a cloud that covers, like a blanket that gives warmth, that gives comfort. So the Buddha sees all this as beauty. The Bodhisattva is seeing the vicissitudes. The Buddha transcends that. Now there's no vicissitudes. It's all the same. It just sees the beauty of it all. And that's, of course, what we're all trying to get to be at that level where we can do it. And we have, to Adrian's point, we have glimpses of that. That's what that book is so good about, is, it calls out some of those glimpses for us and gives us permission to recognize these things on our own. And I'll bet that Adrian has experienced this not by reading these things, but by associating them with things that have come to him during a meditative experience. You say, oh yeah, that gives me some words to put to that experience that I had. I didn't know how to explain that, but here in this book, it's explaining it to me. And it's the same with all this. The Jewel Ornament of Liberation is all filled with, we already know all this stuff. We came from wisdom. The wisdom is locked up inside of us. Now it's a matter of being able to remove the blockages so that we can recognize and remember all that stuff again. That's what we're trying to do. And then it becomes hearing all sounds as elegant sounds. And all the sound just becomes like the current of a river. It's like a blanket, like a cloud, that everything is just covered beautifully and serenely and safe and protected. So it's just making the point that these 22 similes really make a lot of sense. I've read these things 25, 30, 45 times. And every time they always mean a little bit more to me. Okay. So now we turn the page and we go to the next part where it says, what are the primary characteristics of bodhicitta? So we're looking at, we're identifying the vocabulary. We're cutting down. We're really looking at the basics now. What is ultimate bodhicitta? What is relative bodhicitta? So in ultimate bodhicitta, we're talking about, this big bang, what it was there. It's supreme. It's absolute. It can't be divided. It can't be separated. And so our ultimate bodhicitta is to achieve enlightenment. Our objective is to achieve enlightenment. It is pervading emptiness, endowed with the essence of compassion, clear, unmoving, and free from elaboration. So it's realizing that we're in this ocean of suffering, but despite that, we know that we can liberate from this and that we move ourselves towards that ultimate place. And as we've all said, it's all within ourselves. It's being able to know that it's there and to be able to learn, to get the permission to be able to cut through those things that we've held so dear, that we've grasped and clung to through this lifetime and through what we could say would have been lifetimes before. But right now, the only thing we know is this lifetime. So we don't even have to look back in the past like that, past lifetimes. We can appreciate that, but we don't have to go looking for who was I in 1890. Who cares? Right now, who were you in 2005? What was happening then? What was happening last week? But to know that, and maybe that's, I've used the analogy. Why is it that we are here learning these things? Because we had a yearning. We had that yearning faith that there's something more than all the things that I've done so far. I'm not satisfied with those things. They only brought me so far, but I know that there's something else beyond all this. So this ultimate bodhicitta is that which we are yearning for, that we know that we've got this within ourselves. Then the relative bodhicitta is the conventional, is the objective to benefit sentient beings, is being able to say, well, what's the practicality of this? What is it to know all this? And how can I express it to myself? And how can I express it to others? Being able to use the practicality of it. The ultimate is quite abstract. When you try and explain it, you get to these points and you say, well, it's like the Big Bang, and it's ultimate, it's supreme, you can't divide it, and those are very abstract thoughts, and how do you explain that? Well, you got to experience it, but on a relative level, there's ways that we can put words together and images together and everything to help us to understand more about what the relative is and saying, well, this is what we think is really good stuff, but imagine something that is beyond this and allow yourself permission to go beyond that. It says here, as said by the Buddha in the Clarification of Thought Sutra, the mind of ultimate enlightenment is beyond the world, free from all elaborations, the supremely pure, subject of the ultimate, stainless, unmoving, very clear, like the continuity of a lamp, sheltered from the wind. So these are the words of the Buddha. This is a sutra. This is a meditation. here it says further, it says, relative bodhicitta vows to liberate all sentient beings from suffering through compassion. That we're liberating ourselves, we're liberating others through compassion. So we do it in stages. We do it, that we're rising ourselves from the ocean of suffering into this atmosphere of nirvana, but that nirvana is still within dualistic experience, dualistic thought, being a human being, But then what it's saying in the ultimate is that there's something beyond that. And to experience that, we have to go beyond being a human being. So the meditation is the pathway, is the technique that we drop our body. For a period of time, we're sitting there on the cushion and, our breath has gotten very, very slow. Our heart rate has gone very, very slow. Our brain function has gone very, very slow. And then we open up to this inner wisdom that we have, this bodhicitta that we have, and we begin to have the glimpses, we begin to have the experience of that true nature that has been with us our whole entire lives and that everyone is sharing into. This is the tantra, the continuum, and we experience that. So the ultimate bodhicitta and the relative bodhicitta are meditations. Just reading it here right now, hearing me say this, you reading it and trying to think about it, it's just a small veneer. It's just skimming the surface. But when you sit on the cushion and you think about it for an extended period of time, until you feel yourself be lifted, and you get this, we've all been stoned one way or another. I know that. We've all gotten high one way or another. And you know how you get that big head, and then all of a sudden, it kind of pops, and then you're back down to where you were, But if you can maintain that awareness, if you can maintain that big head, or if you can't and you come and you pop and you say, oh, well, there was something there. I had some experience. And then you try and cultivate that over and over and over again. And then it stays with you. And when you get up off the cushion, it stays with you, And until you're challenged in some way to pull you, to bring you down. The expression that we used to use, oh, you're bringing me down. I was so happy. Everything was cool. Now you're bringing me down. Was it your own thoughts that were bringing you down? Was it your emotion was bringing you down? And somebody was just a catalyst for making that happen. Somebody said something to you or picked a fight with you, or you're in the car and some frustrating thing happened or something like that. Can we maintain that openness, that awareness, that love, our heart being open like that? So to do that, to become stable in that, requires, this objectivity of being able to rest the physical body, being able to rest the intellectual mind, and having this transcendent experience. So I imagine in one time or another, we've all had that kind of thing. You didn't have to be, doing Buddhist meditation. You could have been sitting on a boat, on a lake fishing or something like that. You could have been making love to your spouse, to your lover or something, and you could have had a moment like that. So we don't have to be doing these things to have those kinds of glimpses. But now we want to make it transformative. So now we really need to develop it. So we have to go through these meditations to learn how to do that, how to stabilize that, how to make that our mode of living now. Does that make sense? I mean, can you relate to that, Adrian? Is that relevant? Can you understand that?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Yeah.
Gary, have you ever had a moment like that? Maybe a couple moments, huh? Michael, I know you have. You know, and sometimes, sometimes it's something that's been suppressed and you haven't thought about it in a long time. Maybe it was something that happened to you when you were 8 years old.
I only wished it had been one moment. I've had many moments like that.
Okay, yeah. So now our goal is to die like that, is to leave our body like that.
Mm-hmm.
So every meditation is a rehearsal for that moment.
It's
To
a
die.
rehearsal for death.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. To die joyfully in bodhicitta, to die in that wisdom, to die in that compassion, to die in that joy, in that equanimity. Because when we give up our body, when we die, it's our physical body that's gone and our brain that's gone. All that's gone. What's left is our spirituality. And what we're doing now is becoming familiar with that spirituality. In Tibetan, the word for meditation is gom, G-O-M. And the literal translation is familiarity. That's what gom means. Meditation is being familiar with our spiritual self.
What does it mean when for the moment I'll say when Buddhist people who have spent their life on the path and aspiring to continue on the path are caught in a situation like war and die in the midst of a horrible tempest. And they do suffer, not because of what they have done when they've been trying to do just the opposite, when they've been peacemakers and trying to spread the Dharma. But suddenly something like that happens to them because of things beyond their control. What does that mean for them and their future in eternity?
Well, it's a good question. It's got several different points of view to be able to examine that. But if you're saying that someone's a Buddhist and say that someone is in some way or another captured in a violent situation, and your anxiety is going up, what's going to happen to me? And somebody is going to shoot you or stab you or kill you in some way, torture you. How much are you in your body? How much are you aware of that pain and the fear that you're going through? Or how transcendent are you in being able to say, oh, they're just doing this to my body. It's going to be over very soon. And then my spirit will be released. Now, this may sound idealistic to us right now, but you're asking me what a Buddhist think about this, And the goal to be of a Buddhist is to not even notice that you're dead, that your body has died, that you already are in that Dharmakaya, in the truth body of the Buddha, that you just all of a sudden you look around and you say, oh, there's my body, it's dead. I didn't even notice. I'm the Buddha. But if we're in that same situation, say, and despite the fact that we spent our whole life being a Buddhist and practicing Buddhism, doing all these things, and I fight for my life with my captor, and I pick up the gun, or I pick up the knife, or the chair, or whatever I can, or I strangle them with my hands, and I kill that oppressor, now I'm as guilty as they are of taking a life. And I have that to deal with in my death.
That's that's part of my confusion. Maybe it's not confusion, but it's of what I've seen in my life. I've seen Buddhists do that when I had really no connection with Buddhism. In Vietnam, a Buddhist monk.
To see them what? Take a life to protect their own?
Or their own. In Vietnam, a Buddhist monk set himself on fire. I knew
Well, that's a different story.
They're
not taking, that's a different story because they're not taking somebody else's life. They're taking their life, and that's slightly different. It's taking a life, there's no question about it. But the point is that they're not taking somebody else's life. And so my example here was taking somebody else's life to protect yours.
Mm-hmm.
So now all that life of virtue that you built now becomes compromised because of your rage in trying to protect yourself from the fear of death. So that's a circumstance.
There is well, of course, everybody knows about the 37 Bodhisattvas practices. And I think I was opening this here, and at number 13, Bodhisattva practice, it says that even if others try to cut off one's head when one is utterly blameless, taking upon oneself all their negative deeds by the power of compassion is the Bodhisattva's practice.
Right.
So I guess we have to bring that compassion and that practice with us in all aspects of life, not just the quarrel at the grocery store or with a neighbor, but in situations when somebody is trying to take someone's life or your own. Or
so in this that's from this little yellow book, and I think I sent this to you guys, and it says here over and over again, and many other practices and teachings and so on, it says to do these things even at the expense of one's own life, to maintain your virtue even at the expense of your life. I mean, that's a heck of a thing to contemplate.
Yeah.
You know, but this is what we are developed, because we view this life as a temporary life, as in the ocean of suffering, and that it is like a suit of clothes. And eventually our suit of clothes wears out and we want to put a new suit of clothes on. So this is what it's like to have another life, you know, in a very simple way of looking at it. But we have fear. We have fear. Oh, is there going to be pain? You know, how am I going to die? Is it going to be from a bullet? Is it going to be a bullet to my abdomen, to my belly, and I'm going to die a slow death because of intestinal poisoning? Or is it going to be in my heart and I'm going to be dead in 5 seconds? You know, or is it going to be in my brain and I'm not even going to realize that it happened? Am I going to be prepared for that? You know, or is it going to be I'm going to die because of a disease or whatever? We're worried about, you know, the pain. What's the pain of death? Am I going to be ready to be able to see the consequences of my life? Is there a judgment? Is there a pain? Is there pain associated with that? The psychological pain to be able to say, oh, you know, am I going to go to meet God, or who am I going to meet? The Buddha, you know, are they going to judge me? Where am I going to be born in the lower realms? You know, I did these things, you know, when I was a kid? You know, am I going to be punished for that? You know, these fears, you know, is what we're worried about. Otherwise, we can say, oh, it's just like changing a suit of clothes, no problem. But we're worried about the fear of the pain, psychological pain, physical pain, spiritual pain that we're not prepared for. So the whole process, again, of what we're doing is every meditation is a practice for that death. If we go into the meditation knowing I'm going to leave Lance behind, whatever I thought Lance was when I sat down, when I get up, it's going to be a different Lance, or Gary, or Adrian, or Michael, or whomever. And you're going to have the benefit of going through that purification, that experience. This is why when we sit down to meditate in the beginning, you know, we have such a difficult time about it. Our body's twitching, we're thinking about our breathing, because we're afraid to sit there and try and do nothing, because that's what we think that meditation is. But then we find out if we really get into meditation, if we learn, you know, the proper way to do it, at least the way the Buddhists do it, you know, it's a process. It's a system. And then now are we going to be afraid to spend all this time in this system? Am I going to waste this time? I could be out having a good time doing so many other things. Remember the story of the Buddha? When he was sitting under the tree, after he revived himself and he started eating again after he was the starving Buddha, and then he went into his samadhi, and then the three demons came up, remember? And they all said to him, oh, Siddhartha, why are you sitting here wasting your time? You could be with me having such a good time. I can give you all this power. You can manipulate all these beings into being your servants. You can conquer all these people. You can lay waste and have all their land, all their possessions. Oh, you could have all the pleasures of the flesh. We could have such a good time together. Oh my goodness, you can't imagine what it would be until we do it. Why are you sitting here wasting your time? So we're afraid of that. Am I going to waste this life? Am I, you know, what do I got left? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, a week? Am I wasting my time doing all this stuff? You know, at our age, it's not so bad, you know, but when you're 30 years old or something, or 20 years old, it's really hard to give that up. That's really difficult. So is all this making some sense? Can you see, you know? So by sitting and thinking about these things, by thinking about ultimate bodhicitta, by thinking about relative bodhicitta, using these words here of the Buddha as a guidance for us for our meditation is so powerful. Just reading this, you can go off for a half an hour or an hour just meditating on that. And look at all the different permutations of that. Look, I've been talking for 10 minutes about it. You need to take a break, stretch, or you want to keep on going? 2 minutes? Okay.
Yes.
So, Gary, are you using your laptop? Do you have a camera that's built into your laptop?
Yes.
Do you have the ability to bring it down just a little bit? Because I'm
Oh,
always looking at the top of your head.
oh, really? I see my face in it, but maybe it's
But
not.
now you are. But then when you look down, all that we can see is the top of your head.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Is that better?
That's much better.
I'm sorry.
You're too handsome to waste.
Oh, please. I haven't heard that in a long time. Those ears are behind me.
Well, you may not hear it again, but
I'm quite sure.
okay. So now we come to a very profound part of Mahayana teaching. That, you know, we talk about bodhicitta. This is where we're introduced to bodhicitta. And now we're introduced to the two truths. And I don't know about you, but for me, you know, for years and years and years, my meditation was in search of the truth. I had a mantra that said, you know, this is the truth, you know, looking for the truth, you know, one truth is what we're looking for. Buddhism says, hey man, there's two truths. What are you doing fooling yourself? So the two truths are, there's the ultimate truth that as human beings, we can't really comprehend. You know, it's beyond our ability as human beings. We may be able to perceive it. You know, we have a yearning for it. We have some inkling of it. We maybe have had a glimpse or something, but it's nothing that we can articulate, you know? And that's the truth. And that's, you know, maybe that's what we're looking for. But at the same time, there is the other truth. There is the relative truth that of all this phenomena. And what happens is we're trying to find that truth, that one truth in this phenomenal nature, in this relative truth. And we miss the point because we can't see the unity of it. We haven't experienced it at that level. So to put it in these terms here, it says in this book that I have from the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, it says, the two truths, the wish to remove the suffering of all beings without exception by bringing all beings to full enlightenment. And the second is the absolute true nature. So the absolute true nature is that which cannot be elaborated upon, the absolute true nature. And the wish to remove the suffering of all beings without exception by bringing all to enlightenment, that's all the relative stuff. That there's all this stuff that we go through. So this is looking at it from a very high point of view. It says further, it says, ultimate bodhicitta is obtained through the realization of dharmata. The dharmata is the suchness, the true nature of phenomena. The true nature of phenomena, the suchness, not the true nature of wisdom, the true nature of phenomena. The true nature of phenomena is the dualism and all the myriad ways in which that dualism manifests. It's all the appearances. If you take that wisdom and you open it up And the display of all that wisdom, all the possibilities are opened up or exposed, is the relative. But it all comes from that wisdom, from that absolute nature that is undefinable as a human being. What we try and define are all the phenomenal displays. That's what we have to work with. You know, we have our working body, our working basis we talked about in the very beginning of the Ornament of Liberation, that is constantly just trying to understand what all this stuff is. You know? So what we're going through is being able to say, okay, there's all this stuff, and all this stuff creates all these emotions, and these emotions are based on these 5 poisons, but there's these antidotes that help me transcend those emotions. And then I can get to the point now of being able to get to that wisdom level, being able to get to that absolute level, which is glimpse after glimpse of that absolute level. Of going through and just literally exhausting all the relative stuff. You know, we go through saying, well, the absolute isn't this. Oh, it's not that. It's not this. It's all the display of that stuff. But we cling to one part or another of it. We find ways to mentally, intellectually fixate on all these things instead of letting it all go.
So is the Dharmata the same thing as the nature of mind?
Yes, yes. And the nature of mind is a concept. And the wisdom that we're looking for, the Dharmadhatu, the absolute nature, is non-conceptual. So the mind itself is a figment of the imagination, is a figment of the mind itself. It doesn't exist. This is emptiness.
Can you explain again, please?
What we think of the mind, what we call the mind, is this nebulous thing that we experience all this stuff. We're experiencing all this stuff as thoughts. That we agree that we're calling it this, that, and the other thing, and so on. And this is the way that but what about when we are able to transcend all that fixation?
That doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't exist anymore. To get to that point where we see that all this stuff is just all, you know, figments of our collective imagination. And the mind is part of that. The mind is a concept. And that's a mind blower. So we say, so figuratively, again, we use the example of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. We say the body of the Buddha, the speech of the Buddha, and the mind of the Buddha. But this is like the last vestige of something that we use as vehicles, and that's what it is. The Dharma, the Nirmanakaya vehicle, the Sambhogakaya vehicle, and the Dharmakaya vehicle. These vehicles to take us to that which is non-conceptual, beyond being a human being. If we are 3-dimensional objects in a field of 4 dimensions or 5 dimensions or 6 dimensions or 16 dimensions, then why are we holding on to just this 3-dimensional object when there's all that out there, if you want to use that as an example? So we have to, so the whole thing is preparing ourselves to let go of all preconceived ideas, mental misconceptions. You know, we talk about that there's 8 consciousness levels. There's eye consciousness, there's smell consciousness, there's taste consciousness, there's hearing consciousness, there's touch consciousness, there's mind consciousness that is receiving all these inputs from these 5 devices, these sensory devices that are picking all this up. That's the 6th sense, is that mind, but it's a lower mind. And then there's the consciousness of karma. The I, the me, the mind, the consciousness of the self. And then that's number 7. And then the 8th consciousness is called the alaya consciousness. And this is the consciousness of, it's called the storehouse. So a parallel to this in other philosophy would be like the soul. And do we fixate to the I, me, mine, to this higher karmic level, that everything I do has all this karmic stuff that is happening, and I'm leading my life based on all these karmic, activities and so on. And then the results of those then get stored in this storehouse place. And now I'm fixating to that. I'm doing all this for the benefit of that alaya consciousness. But is all this just figments of our imagination? Is all this just rationalization of our 3-dimensional selves?
So is the 8th consciousness more of the same thing of awareness?
It's rationalization of what it thinks awareness is. It's a diluted awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It's awareness of phenomenal nature without recognizing that it's phenomenal nature, that it's relative nature. It's seeing it as permanent. So this is what we talk about emptiness. That all this relative, all this phenomenal nature is empty of any inherent existence. All this conceptuality is all compounded stuff. None of it exists on its own. So we're blowing away the whole point of what permanence is. What's permanence? Rational thought, logic, only takes us through the phenomenal, takes us through the relative. We have to get beyond the rational. And then we find that we go to the extraordinary, which then we recognize as being, well, that's the ordinary. That's where I need to be. That's the natural state of being. That's the true nature. And now all this stuff that I thought was all real, that becomes extraordinary. Because this ordinary, all this stuff is within the ordinary. And it's all this extraordinary bastardization of all these appearances, all this confusion that we create for ourselves. So in the Mahayana, this is what we're exposed to. This is what we're introduced to in the Mahayana. The Hinayana doesn't get to this point. The Mahayana does, I mean, the Hinayana does not look at the two truths. It sees itself as being existent. And if I can end my existence, I will reach nirvana. And reaching nirvana is equal in their mind, in that philosophy, in that level, is equal to enlightenment. But nirvana is just the other side of samsara. The Hinayanist doesn't recognize that. But when the Hinayanist finally realizes, I'm suffering even when I'm in nirvana, and I have to be able to transcend that duality, then they begin to enter into the Mahayana, because they realize that they're still suffering. And because we're all connected, we're all spiritual, if there's suffering anywhere, I'm suffering. And because I can be happy, I can have an influence on that. And maybe I can help transform that. But that can have an influence on me. Just like if I'm very sad and somebody comes in with good happiness, it can transform my suffering. We can do that with others. But at the same time, if I'm really happy, and like I said, they come in with their suffering, it can make me suffer now. So it's all part of the relative.
Lance,
Yes.
if you're enlightened, are you suffering?
Of course not.
Even though there is suffering and you're aware that there is suffering, you're not suffering because you've reached.
Well, that's to be enlightened means to be a Buddha.
Okay.
To be enlightened means is the mind of the Buddha, the enlightened, the awakened mind of the Buddha. Now, the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, attained enlightenment when he was 35 years old. And he taught for the next 50 years or so. And all that time, he saw lots of suffering. But he himself was not suffering. He was transcendent of that suffering. He saw the suffering and realized that the reason, the cause of that suffering was each individual causing their own suffering. He transcended his suffering. He overcame his suffering. And then he said, this is how I did it. I'm going to teach you the Dharma. This is how I did it. And I maintain this. And I'll prove it to you over and over and over again. If you will try it yourself. You know, and I don't know if that's exactly the right way to phrase it, you know, that I'll prove it to you over and over again. It was up to them to test it themselves, is the point I was trying to make. He said, I can't give you enlightenment. I can show you how I attained enlightenment. Don't take my word for it. You have to do it yourself. So from a point of view, we're all enlightened. Now, if you meet somebody from another world, from another part of the planet, who is going through famine or is going through war and so on like that, and they see you, they see us, who have a good life, we have peace, you know, relative peace around, at least around in our circle and so on. We're not involved directly with that and everything. They would say, oh, these people are so enlightened. They know how to manage, you know, the earth so that we don't have famine, and they know how to manage their emotions so they're not going around killing each other and so on. And they would look upon us as being evolved, transcendent beings, because we know how to do that. They're locked into their suffering. So the point I'm trying to make is that enlightenment has relative levels to it. So we get on that path. Remember the spiral. And each one of the turns of the spiral gets tighter and tighter. And relative to the lower levels, it's more enlightened. Each one above the next one is more enlightened than the one below it. There's more purification that took place to get to the next level and so on. So it's a progression. How does it say it in the prayer? Excuse me 1 second. I want to say it right. On page 4 in your book, I've referred this to you before. Page 4, taking the Bodhisattva vow. The second stanza, it says, as the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path. That's how they got to be Buddhas, on the Bodhisattva path. And they progressed. It's not something that you go like that. It's not that simple like that. There will be those epiphanies. There will be those moments, those aha moments and so on. But they won't be stable. But we build on those. So we catch those glimpses of that which is inexpressible, the ultimate truth or the absolute truth. And then we're no longer deluded by the phenomenal truth, by the relative truth. We're not deluded by it. We see all the possibilities. And then we choose what possibilities, what things we want to engage in, what things we want to involve in. We have families, we have responsibilities, but now we do it as an enlightened being. We know it's all impermanent. We know we're going to let it go at some point. So we have a different point of view about what all this is. We're looking at it now from a more enlightened point of view. We don't engage in war. We know how to sustain proper agriculture, to grow crops and so on. So we're not subject to the famine. We know how to protect ourselves from diseases. How come none of us have gotten COVID-19? Because we've all been wearing masks, we've all kept our distance, we've been staying home. That was pretty enlightened. It's very simple. Who's getting sick? The people that don't do those things. So we've been exercising enlightenment. So it says here, ultimate bodhicitta is obtained through the realization of the dharmata, suchness, the true nature of phenomena, while relative bodhicitta is obtained through ritual ceremony. So the ritual ceremony is going through all the vicissitudes of all these possibilities, all these changes. Ultimate doesn't need to change. Absolute doesn't need to change. It's already there. From a language point of view, how do you describe it? It's indescribable. Is being there, is that saying it's of the 16th dimension, or the 4th dimension, or the 5th dimension, or the 7th dimension? Maybe so. You know, as we have these deep samadhis, we begin to have these experiences, and then how do we characterize them? Back in our day, you know, a lot of this stuff came by way of psychedelic experience. And then there was a lot of people who were the prophets of the psychedelic experience, who then went off to UFO theory and all this crazy stuff and everything. They got seduced by the possibilities and the relative. Is it true that there's UFOs and stuff like that? And were they confusing what they saw? Or have we just not opened ourselves up enough to be able to recognize what they recognize? It's an interesting question. But just like the Buddha said, you know, I can't give it to you, you got to experience it yourself. For me, that's not true. You know, this UFO stuff and everything, you know, I've been as high as anybody. And I know the seduction of those kinds of thoughts. But it's just mind games, just more mind games. So then it says here, so the ritual ceremony now, again, because it's important, this ritual ceremony, this is, you know, this is one of the things that guys like us probably, you know, have had an aversion to. Say, oh, I'm not into that religion stuff. I'm not into that ritual stuff. You know, that's cultish. I'm not into that. You know, if you allow yourself to be swept up in it and seduced by it, you know, it just becomes another ego game and so on. Well, that's true, you know, but on the other hand, can that ritual be a tool? And tools are devices that help us to accomplish something. And once we accomplish it, we no longer need the tool. The example is the boatman, the ferry boatman, who's on the shore, you know, and there's this body of water, and on the other shore is enlightenment. But you got to cross this body of water to get there. So you make this boat, you make a raft, you hire a boatman, a ferry boatman, whatever it takes to get across that body of water. And maybe it's a raging river, or maybe it's a placid lake, or whatever. But once you get over on the other side of the lake, on the other side of the water, and you get to the land of enlightenment, do you need that boat anymore? You can let it go. It was a tool. So the boat is a metaphor for our ritual devices. So whether it's the bells, whether it's the drums, whether it's all the symbols, whether it's the beads, all these things are just devices to help us to create mindfulness of one-pointed mindfulness.
Is that why we have the dissolution phase for each practice?
Exactly. We let all that go. Exactly. So in emptiness, we're seeing all this phenomenal nature. So it says here, emptiness, the lack of inherent reality of a phenomena or a person. So we see all this stuff as empty of its own inherent reality. Reality, being real. What's being real? So all this stuff is food for meditation. You know, I can sit here and talk about this all night long. You know, it comes because I've been able to attain a level of stream of consciousness for this. So I'm just offering myself up as an example, giving you permission to do the same thing. This is what a teacher does. You know, there's many pathways. The Dharma is the best explanation that I've found for it. If you find some mushrooms, something psychedelic like that, you can have, the doors can be open, the windows can be open, your mind can be open, but you're not in control of it. It's like watching a movie. And then you come to you say, is it valid? Was that real? Can I do that on my own? And then you set upon to do it naturally. And you find, oh, okay, that gave me permission to be able to do it. That gave me a way to be able to see what it can be done naturally. Now you can say, okay, this was natural food. Psychedelic means food of the psyche. It's by no accident that all this happens. What do you think Dutsi is? Amrita. You were asking me last night about elixir and about Amrita. You know, the Dharma, I said it was the Dharma, you know, but in a very esoteric way, you know, what gets you to realize that might be, you know, these foods of the earth. I'm not suggesting that people go out and start doing these things. But I can say that whatever you can do with those things, you can do naturally. So sometimes having these small groups like we are tonight, we can go into some things that we might not go into with larger groups. So this emptiness again is recognizing the compounded nature of all things, that it's empty of its own individual existence. Tell me what exists on its own. Can you define anything like that?
Change.
What was that?
Change.
Change? Well, that's a concept, isn't it?
Yeah. No, nothing exists independent of other things, and that's just conceptual also. But
Of the mind.
Yeah.
It's all relative to the mind, isn't it? The way that we observe it. And that's why the mind blower becomes, the mind is just another concept.
I think from my experience, that's from my experience a long time ago, That's one of the things that hallucinogenics can do for us. It gives us its own sort of glimpses because it allows us to kind of look around or look below some of those structures that we build that allow us to believe that phenomena are in ourselves are solid in some way. So we get to kind of see through them and doubt that what we're looking at is as solid as we believe. And I think it's that doubt that gets very healthy. If you can look at reality and say, well, maybe not. You know,
Well,
maybe.
it's true, but I do try and differentiate, and I know it's just words, but to differentiate between hallucinogens and psychedelics.
Yeah.
Because to me, hallucinogens, connotes, just a fantasy of some type or another, but a psychedelic is more specific to opening up, a knowledge base. Maybe I'm wrong in that, but that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Well, I think psilocybin, psilocybin, mescaline, LSD in certain quantities, they are all psychedelics.
Correct.
Whereas you've got some make believes, something synthetics that just allow you to dream. Yeah.
Right. Would opium be called a hallucinogenic? But it's certainly not a psychedelic. You turn your microphone off, so.
Definitely a hallucinogenic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't call it a psychedelic.
No. Doesn't open up any space to peer into. Yeah.
But again, these are tools. Could you get across the river? Could you get across that body of water from this land to the next land? Could you get across without the boat? Well, possibly if you were strong enough to swim across yourself, or if you knew where there was a crossing that was easy for you to ford that you could walk across or something like that, maybe so. So I'm just pointing out that, those devices can be crutches, and we can attach to those crutches. And that's all part of the process and dealing with that. And the same thing with the ritualistic objects. They become crutches. Oh, I can't meditate unless I got my beads. Oh, I can't do this practice unless I got my bell and dorje. Oh, I can't do it unless I got my pictures and so on like that. So all these things, have all those potentials, for confusion. You take enough aspirin, it might kill you. But meanwhile, you take a couple tabs of aspirin, it gets rid of your headache. So I think we should leave it here for tonight. If anybody has any more conversation, but we have more to talk about with this, the profound view, the action view, other aspects about this, how it pertains then to Buddhist endeavor, what the lineages are and so on, how we develop bodhicitta awareness and actualization. So that's the next part of this chapter. So Tom, I know you just tuned in and everything, and I would recommend to you, if you can, to watch this, on YouTube, because this was a very, very good teaching in terms of, the depth of material.
Oh, I plan to. Oh, definitely. And like I said, I tuned in a little late. I mean, real late, because the other session turned into just
Okay.
something else. But yeah, I mean, definitely.
Well, let me ask Adrian and Michael and Gary. I mean, how would you give a synopsis or a critique of this particular talk that we just had?
I would say that some depths were plumbed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I'm cooking a question in my mind right now. That's that's why I'm quiet. But I was thinking about, speaking of the rituals and things, I was just kind of like thinking through my mind where devotion comes into play with all this. And I guess with all the similes that we talked about today of bodhicitta, I guess that will be with the ordinary level, the earnest desire to achieve enlightenment. Would that be pretty much the same thing with devotion?
Well, I think it comes down to, let's define devotion. So let me look it up. So devotion says adherence, adoration, affection, allegiance, attachment, dedication, deference, enthusiasm, faithfulness. These are all how you say, words that mean the same thing. Here the definition is the profound dedication, a consecration, an earnest attachment to a cause, to a person. This is devotion. So I think the question, what devotion is, this is something that we have to want to, as Michael said, to plumb the depths of this. And the devotion to the system, to be able to trust in the system and fearlessly engage in the system. Because I'm sure we just went through maybe 2 or 3 mind-blowing phrases or ideas, concepts that kind of rock what we've known to think that we knew was true. So now we have to fearlessly intellectualize what that is and try and understand that.
Yeah, I think with devotion comes a sense of courage, and I'm hearing that too.
Yeah, courage. I think there's got to be courage.
Because devotion is
Trust.
there's usually a sense of adversity almost, afflictions,
Yeah.
obstructions.
So Samantabhadra, so that in the eight great bodhisattvas that we've talked about in the past, the bodhisattva Samantabhadra is the bodhisattva of devotion. So whenever we go in the books here, in these prayers, very, very often it makes a reference to the devotion of Samantabhadra, the bodhisattva Samantabhadra. It's called Samyang. His name is actually Samyang Kuntu Zangpo in Tibet. Samyang Kuntu Zangpo. And what it means the devotion of the mind. And I'm pointing up here, but it really is this mind. It's the heart mind. To plumb the depths of that. There's an analogy about the heart, that the heart is in the midst of this web, of this knot. And the knot is, in the beginning is very tight. And the heart is like a light that's inside of it. And that our job is to loosen it up, and then the light starts coming through. I've used that analogy just by saying that the heart's blocked up. But here I'm using the analogy that what's blocking it up is this web that we've cast for ourselves. And we have to let those tendrils break apart and so on. Loosen that up. So
Yeah,
it
it's,
takes
but it's
devotion.
definitely.
I'm sorry, wait a minute. What were you going to say?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it takes devotion to want to do that.
Hmm.
Okay. Somebody was saying something. Was it Gary?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that was me. I started saying something, and definitely I think devotion has a lot of things mixed in, but I think, like Michael said, is trust and courage into this practices. But I guess to some point, you have to be very careful and not to mix any desire for any results within it. Because if you have that desire to get those results, that's going to be an obstruction.
Well, allow yourself for errors. I don't think you got to do it perfect every single time or the first time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just, you know, if you find you went down the wrong road, just you say, okay, I'm on the wrong road. Let me back up. And I had a choice. Let me go down that other road. We learn more from our failures than we learn from our successes. So don't be afraid having the devotion to the system. That's why having a system is so important, because now it's a repeatable system. We can say, okay, I can go this way now. Use the same principles and go the other choice.
Adrian really hit the bullseye, to use a trite term, when he talked about results. We've been raised with that orientation. We have been raised in this country and a lot of countries, I guess, to be high need achievers. And high need achievers need definable, quantifiable results. We even tried to turn, our study of theories into things that are quantifiable, that have results that we can point to, instead of, I think what you're talking about, it may not be the best word to use, but that the process itself is important. Not being able to define that we've reached the end of the road, but the path itself, the journey itself is more important, not definable results.
Perfection is being on the path, is knowing the path and following the path.
Yeah, there is no end to it. You're never really there. Enlightenment, I guess, is there. Buddhahood is there. But for most of us, and especially me, we're not close to that. So the journey is what's important.
Well, you're on the right track.
Right.
Okay, anybody got anything else you want to talk about? Otherwise, we'll do our dedications and we'll carry this on next week. So we go to page 18 in the 101 book. Michael, you want to lead this? You were the umze for tonight.
We try.
You don't have to do the Tibetan, just English.
Okay, I can do that. Dedication prayers. Goje Chang, Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dharmalode Genpopa, Agmon Drupa, and Lord Rinkumpa, please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessings of all the Kagyu Lamas. By this virtue may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I might not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. By the blessings of the Buddha who attained the three kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Dingkumpa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, yogins, yoginis, and dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the three times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate root of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. May the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings by the power of this vast root of virtue. May I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that, may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Ah, Om. Om. Ah, Om. May the body, speech, and mind resonate with the body, speech, and mind of the enlightened ones.
Very good. Thank you all very much.